Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today we are going to discuss the unfolding events in Egypt, particularly with President Morsi's declaration claiming certain powers for himself which he didn't have before, and also the kind of constitution he is planning to put to the people through a referendum in Egypt. We have with us Professor Aijaz Ahmad to discuss these issues. Aijaz, what do you think the events of the last few days, in which we see a virtual vertical split in Egyptian polity, what do you think it portends right now?
My sense is, frankly, that everyone is overplaying their hand. Morsi overplayed his hand. If he had simply said, I am reversing such and such decisions having to do with the Mubarak regime, two or three things, the first couple of things. But after that, when he says, my future orders cannot be challenged in a court of law, and no court not even the highest court in Egypt has a right to review either what I do or what the upper house, the Shura Council, the upper house of Egyptian parliament does. So that is and people are describing it as dictatorial powers, and that's true. These are dictatorial powers, and he must step back on that.
And he is not given a time limit for this kind of power.
Yes, he says it is temporary. It is temporary, but even if he says 90 days, I still remember that when Ziaul-Haq came to made his coup, he said within 90 days there will be a civilian government. From that, he has to step back. That much. So he has overplayed his hand. Why he has overplayed his hand, I don't know. Maybe a moment of confidence that I have just come out as a hero from having negotiated this grand thing which favors Hamas and so on, and this is the time for me to strike. Maybe that. Maybe, within the Muslim Brotherhood there are immense faction fights, both at the top and at the bottom. How those faction fights are playing in a decision of this kind and the timing of it. It is also true that he was very much being hemmed in by those very institutions which are, holdovers from the Mubarak regime. So he's sort of saying, I want to be free of this. So but in my view, he absolutely overplayed his hand.
So there was a basis for saying some of those things needed to be done.
Absolutely.
But his declaration of absolute powers for himself, no judicial review, and he did not make it clear that there's any action of his which should be outside judicial review.
No,
now he's saying some of that. Now he's saying some of that, and that time he did.
Yeah. In the original decree, he did not. Later on, he makes the distinction that only the sovereign decisions and not the administrative ones. But the sovereign decisions are the issue. If there is a separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary, then the executive can't unilaterally decide which of the decisions are worthy of review and which of them are not.
But the point again that you make is to correct that it also is true that the lot of the judiciary that were taking the decisions were also holdovers from the Mubarak regime.
Absolutely.
And therefore there were basic questions about them as well.
And there was a real fear that the judiciary may dismiss the Shura. They may even challenge and thereby isolate him completely. Now because in the Shura Council he has a majority, his decisions at least carry that kind of authority. If the Shura goes, then it's only personal power. So that is also true. About that, though, Prabir, I would say that this same President Morsi has not carried out any purges in the police, intelligence, or army. He has sent out some of the top people, even protected them from prosecution, is using those same instruments of state violence against people, the way the police has been terrorizing people is not very different than it was under Mubarak regime.
Aijaz, it's a very important issue that you're raising, because today he's also passed the resolution that the police and military are above also any law.
Absolutely.
They have complete judicial authority.
In that sense, one feels like going back to the position that I've held, that there is actually a deal between the Muslim Brotherhood and the repressive apparatus,
the security
of the state,
apparatus of the state.
And what you might call the overall right-wing bloc, minus perhaps parts of the old Mubarak regime, the civilian part of it.
One other question is that there is a constitution also which has been proposed, in which Sharia has a certain position, which it might earlier also have held. But two other things. One is there is Al-Azhar clergy is supposed to have certain overriding powers to interpret how Sharia is going to be implemented through the constitution, one. And secondly, there are other powers which seem to have been given, which would make at least the minorities and the secular sections very unhappy. Do you think that part of the constitution which President Morsi wants to force through is also a problem today?
That Article 2 of the Constitution reads exactly like the Constitution of Pakistan under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who styled himself a socialist. He certainly was not an Islamicist of any kind. Any number of these Muslim majority countries have that. It could even be actually, they could have phrased it much more stringently. They have not. So Al-Azhar clergy in Egypt has had this position since Farouk's days. Nasser didn't touch it, because this clergy gives any fatwa that the regime wants, whatever the regime it is. They anointed all the decrees of Nasser and then of Sadat and then of Mubarak, and they'll do it for Muslim Brotherhood. Now the problem is that Muslim Brotherhood being in power and proposing things with the Al-Azhar clergy can then put an Islamic stamp on it. That is where the worry really is. That this is a very different kind of combination. And Al-Azhar clergy subservient to a thoroughly secular regime like that of Nasser was one thing, but it being subservient to Muslim Brotherhood
spells a different kind of danger.
It's a completely different sort of thing. So it is actually in the operational things that one is worried about, not the actual fact.
You also said that both sides have overplayed their hand.
Yes.
What would you really mean by both sides? What has the other side done which you think is overplayed hands?
Look, the fact of the matter is that since March 2011, there have been 7 elections in Egypt. Except for the presidential elections, Islamicists won overwhelmingly. In the presidential election which they won only by 52%. But that is because the entire state apparatus of the old Mubarak regime had come out opposing them and had propped up the Shafiq thing. There is no question that when it comes to principles of liberal democracy, Islamicists have 2/3 of Egypt. Now, you either want liberal democracy or you don't want liberal democracy. The opposition, all shades of it, left, whatever, has always made this revolution, so to speak, in the name of democracy. So there is a democratic legitimacy to them and what they are doing. I mean, he has a 2/3 majority in that parliament, and Salafists are supporting him. Okay, that is one problem I have. That you have to then accept this. The second problem I have is that the opposition includes all the way from a genuine, authentic left to what in Egypt are called the falul, the remnants of the Mubarak regime, and everything in between. So it is not a polarization in that sense. All kinds of people are out there. And my sense is that the really authentic, radical sort of secular democratic forces are also being used by all of these people to stay in the game. Whether it be Amr Musa, it may be whatever. And ultimately, look, Leninist dictum, you cannot reap what you have not sown. If you did not use that long night of Sadat Mubarak regimes, building up real organizational structures, they may have even been weaker, but real organizational structures, and now you think you are the legitimate heir to the uprising, this is rather an overextended claim. My sense is that this is a time in which a lot of the tensions inside the Muslim Brotherhood are such that even a lot of the liberal elements in the Muslim Brotherhood are leaving the Brotherhood. There is a lot of dissatisfaction inside. There is the extremist section, which is who I believe has sent out these Muslim Brotherhood goons
who did
to
attack
stage
the,
this, to attack the democracy protesters. This was the time, I believe, to actually build that which you did not build in the past. Muslim Brotherhood, by and large, wanted to play by the book, as they're doing in Tunisia. My sense is that if Morsi climbs down from this position, then there should be a dialogue and some kind of a, settlement of some sort. Because in my view, the longer this goes on, the greater the chance of a military or military police intelligence sort of intervention, with or without, probably with the collusion of the Muslim Brotherhood. That this is going on for too long, I cannot allow all this to go on. I'm giving such and such a powers, more powers to them. And what you were mentioning, that today he has said that even the police and the armed forces, is he planning to bring them out?
Looks that's a possibility. Looks
so,
a possibility. So the chance, he's also offered some kind of negotiations,
right,
some kind of postponement to the referendum on the constitutional constitution, which was supposed to be held I think on the 15th
of December.
So the question again is that are there enough political judgment on both sides? And this is really what a long mass politics school of education, shall we say, brings to political parties, which these political parties don't have. That how to negotiate differences within a system by which you don't really collapse the system and bring back something that none of you want. Do they really have that political acumen to do it or not? That seems to be the question.
My sense is that actual objective should be to allow the Morsi government, force it to become more inclusive, more liberal, more committed to the actual rules of parliamentary democracy. But assure them that if they do that,
then we'll play ball.
Then we'll play ball.
That brings me to the last question I have, that the Muslim Brotherhood seems to believe, or some sections of it seems to believe, majority means democracy. They don't understand the difference between majoritarianism and democracy, while the other sections believes in this abstract concept of democracy, as you said, but not the numbers. And both sides have to really understand democracy is something slightly different from what they think it is.
But you see, I'll go further. See, Muslim Brotherhood never believed in democracy, majority, anything. It believed in the Islamic State. It was a revolutionary organization of the far right. It is, in my view, the defeat of the Islamicists in Algeria which made them sit back and say that, you know, even if we go this path, that degree of violence, if there is a purposeful secular state, it can beat us. Okay. On top of that came the very peculiar evolution in Turkey, where an Islamicist regime came into power and did this over a period of 8 years. I think it is these two things, the defeat in Algeria and the success in Turkey, which in fact changed the minds of the Muslim Brotherhood and brought them into this discourse of democracy and majority and so on and so forth. Their notion of all of it is instrumental. It's not as if they actually believe in majority minority. They actually believe in the dictatorship of faith, which they represent, not somebody else's faith. So, you know, and the reason they lack this notion of respect for the minorities is that they really do not, they have no commitment to democracy.
While they might learn the rules of the game, there is really no deep-seated belief in the rules of the game.
And hope, I mean, my hope is that in the process of this crisis, the fissures inside the Muslim Brotherhood will become much larger and irreparable.
6 of these presidential advisors have quit, so that does seem to indicate at least.
And you know, over the last 3 or 4 months, hundreds of their cadre have defected, joined Abdel Fattah or joined somebody else, but left the Brotherhood. A lot of the young, urban, middle-class people who were in Muslim Brotherhood are leaving.
They're the ones who came and joined the revolutionary upsurge first and then dragged the Brotherhood into it, if you remember.
You see, something very interesting to watch is what happens inside the Muslim Brotherhood, because it strikes me that it's a kind of a three-way split. On the one hand, there are these sort of what you might call the majority, the bulk of the Muslim Brotherhood who want to follow the Turkish, Tunisian sort of line. There are those younger people within it who are urban, middle-class people who joined the uprising from the very beginning and who have become very dissatisfied with the intransigence of this leadership and who are leaving in very large numbers. And then there is a very old style part of the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood at the very top, which has a much more reactionary, much more militant position of the sort that they used to have. This is the time to, we have taken power, this is the time to go ahead for it. So this crisis may actually precipitate a further crisis inside the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay, Aijaz, I think the situation is very unclear what's happening in Egypt, which way it will go. This seems to be one of those historic moments where things may patch up, at least temporarily, and Egypt will consolidate some of its democracy, or it can break up and lead to a reversal of the upsurge, democratic upsurge we have seen. So something that we need to watch.
It's very much open, very much open
at this point. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you very much.
Hope to follow as the things continue in the Arab world.
Indeed.